Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampa Dhritavigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namama Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tayo Sritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Namasri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surai Satchid Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharini. So, Sadhana Chatushtaya, the fourfold spiritual practices, as has been exemplified in the life of Holy Mother. That's the topic which we have chosen for our today's talk on the occasion of Holy Mother's birthday celebration. So in Vedanta, we know that as a practice, they speak of fourfold spiritual practices: Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhamadi, Shat Sampatti, and Mokshutva. So how these fourfold spiritual practices was exemplified in the life of Holy Mother. So that's what we are going to discuss today. At the very onset, we should remember, we should always keep this in mind, that the life of a spiritually illumined soul, in the life of a spiritually illumined soul, there's no question of spiritual practice as we think of. Because we find in the life of a spiritually illumined soul that all the so-called traits which we think as sadhana, as practice, is something spontaneous, is finding expression as a natural way of their living. It's a spontaneous expression. It's not for them the sadhana. But what is sadhana? Very nicely, Shankaracharya defines sadhana, or spiritual practice. That the spontaneous or natural way of living of a spiritually illumined person, when we are trying to internalize those, when we are trying to imitate the way of living of a spiritually illumined soul, for whom that living is spontaneous. It's not he or she is endeavoring for that. But when we try to imitate, for us it becomes an endeavor. We find that it's not something which is spontaneous in our life. We have to cultivate it. And that's what is sadhana. So when we say sadhana, as exemplified in Holy Mother's life, we should be aware of the fact that it's something very spontaneous in Holy Mother's life. It's not something that she is trying. It was something as a spontaneous expression. And as it was so natural, that's why Holy Mother's life appears to be so simple. And to give an example at the very beginning, in our student life, we all must have experienced it. That when the teacher is solving some mathematical problem in the blackboard, step by step, he's following the steps, he's solving the mathematical problem. And after he has solved, he asks us, he or she asks us, the students, have you understood the steps? We all say yes. It's easy. And then he will just wipe out what he has done and he will call one of the students and say that just do it. And then we find that we are getting stuck in so many steps. It appeared to be so easy because for the teacher, it was spontaneous. He was just doing it. Seeing him doing in such a spontaneous way, it gave us an impression that It's something very easy. But when we try, then we find that it's not that easy. That's why we find that who for the first time is reading the life of Holy Mother, the question is, what's there in it? To understand that what's there, it is such a simple life. The only answer will be you lead that life. That in spite of thousands of problems, do you maintain that equanimity? Still, do you have the love for all? You are not judgmental. You don't blame others for the situations of life through which you are going. As it is so spontaneous in the life of Holy Mother, we simply miss out. That's why when someone asked Holy Mother that what's something extraordinary about you, the Holy Mother's reply was that, can you just lead such a simple life? That answer itself is again so simple, we miss the point. That we will find in our life, it is we, because of our own psychological aberrations, bents of mind, we do create unnecessary complications in our life. The life otherwise would have been a very a spontaneous flow. We find, when we from retrospect, if we try to judge ourselves without being biased to my own way of life, by thinking that I am always right, if we are sufficiently humble to just look back, we will find that how our biases, our inordinate attachments have sometimes really clouded our vision and made the way of life unnecessarily complicated. Otherwise, we could have kept it very simple. So this is the idea of sadhana behind the lives of the spiritually illumined soul. It's not sadhana for them. They live a very simple, spontaneous life. For us, it becomes a sadhana. So now we will try to understand the sadhana chatushtaya, as has been spoken of in Vedanta, how it has been exemplified in the life of Holy Mother. So, as we have indicated, that the sadhana, the fourfold spiritual practice, speaks of viveka. What is viveka? So it is the first practice. In Vedanta, they define viveka as nitya, anitya, vastu, vichara, viveka. Nitya, nitya, vastu, vichara. That what is ephemeral, what is flowing, what is transient, and what is something which is permanent as the background of it. Constantly discriminate between these two is viveka. We will find that in our life, why our life becomes complicated? The thing which is going to pass off, which is transient, which is flowing, with all our intelligence, with all our qualifications, with all our degree, what we do, that basic common sense we lack. That's why in one place in the Swami Vivekananda's complete works, we find the Swami is saying that the most uncommon thing in this world is common sense. That if this world is transient, everything is going to simply flow by, nothing is going to be permanent, then why this much of clinging? With all our education, somehow we find we somehow cannot get rid of the idea of clinging to life, in spite of the very commonsensical fact that it is not going to stay with us. And that's why we suffer. Not only suffer, all throughout our life, all the complications, all the fight with our relations, everything happens because of clinging, inordinate clinging to something which is going to pass away. However I try, I cannot stay with those things eternally. But there is something which is eternal. We are not at all aware of it. We are not bothered about it. So in the life of Holy Mother, almost at the fag end of his life, he will indicate an incident that how that the life shows that the Viveka was something spontaneous in their life. It was in the month of December in 1980. Holy Mother was seated on the veranda of her house at Jayanambati. She used to spend some time of the year in her parental home at Jairambati, and the remaining part of the year she used to be in Calcutta with her devotees staying in Bodhan. So it was the time when she was at her house at Jairambati in December 1918. She was just relaxing, sitting in the veranda, and suddenly he saw two of his brothers. Though they are the brothers of Holy Mother, they were as such that biological relation doesn't mean that they all spiritually illumined souls, all the biological relations also will be illumined. They were like any other ordinary human being, extremely worldly and very much attached to their property. So now these two brothers, Kali Kumar and Boroda, so these two brothers started quarreling. Holy Mother was observing. What was the context of the quarrel? That Kali Kumar, the younger brother, he was building a fence. And that fence, that extension of the fence was creating an obstruction for Boroda, the other brother, the elder brother. Boroda has to carry the paddy to the farm yard. And this new fencing was obstructing the way which he used to use for this carrying the paddy. This was the context on which the quarrel started. Now just see this inordinate attachment. It is a very obvious thing that let us all live together. For sometimes it's necessary. It's not that just this is my land and I have to have the full right till the last point of it. This may sometimes, it's justified, but it may create unnecessary complications. Even a 2 or 3 inches inside is not going to in any way affect my way of living. At the same time, it is going to help others. But I start claiming this is my land. And that's the same thing which is happening there. And the quarrel was so intense that at last they came to blows. They were almost at the point of coming to blows. And then Holy Mother got a bit agitated. After all, there is her brothers. She got up. She came almost running and stood between the two brothers. And she always had a long bell. That bell fell off. And she was shouting at both of them. Hearing her shout, the others, some of the devotees who were there, they came running. And they somehow managed to just take them apart, Kali Kumar and Bharata. They were still swearing at each other when they were, and this is a common thing which we find. We all most probably have experienced at some point of life this type of this total lack of control of our own emotions. They were at rage, they were swearing at each other, though they were forcefully dragged apart. And now when Holy Mother found that there is no chance that they will come to blows, though they are a bit angry, it will take some time for them to subside. Holy Mother was totally exhausted because of that. She came running, and after all, these brothers were quite strong. She was trying her best to separate them, and she got a bit exhausted. She again went back, sat on the veranda, and it took just a matter of minutes. Suddenly, she started laughing aloud. She was having a burst of laughter. And what she was saying is something very important. That here is this infinite world. It is, it was, it is going to be there. And what one claims as his or her possession will be left behind after death. Still, humans cannot understand this simple truth, So here, this simple example. And another thing, very example, this Holy Mother got agitated because he saw the brothers are about to come to blows. Naturally, she has to go and stop them. The moment needed that she had to be proactive. So it doesn't mean that Vivek doesn't mean that we have to be like something calm, means totally inactive. Even if I see someone fighting, I don't try to go and stop them. Yes, I become proactive. And for that, a little agitation is built up even within me also. But what's the characteristic of a realized soul? He or she very quickly comes back again to that equipoise state. The agitation may happen. Even in the life of Jesus, when he was about to be crucified, suddenly the doubt came, oh God, have you forsaken me? The very next moment, that famous statement, which has made Jesus immortal, that, oh Lord, please forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Just see, even for a divine incarnation, the doubt in the mind do come. They vacillate. But they are like the toy with center of gravity at, that is having a center of gravity at a low point. So they cannot be in any way, you cannot make them fall. They most probably are balanced. If you push them, they will be also agitated. They'll be moving violently, but very quickly they will again come back to the balance. There is no question of falling off the balance. So this spiritually illumined souls, when they are dealing with the day-to-day life, that it may appear that for the time being, they also get a bit vacillated, but very quickly they come back to the balance. So in our life, we find many people say that situation disturbs me, and that situation disturbs me becomes the cause of more turmoil, that I somehow cannot keep the balance. Know it for certain that the situations of life, as per the demands, we are bound to get a bit disturbed. That's quite okay. But how quickly we are coming back again to our awareness, the spiritual awareness, and so that we can maintain our equipoise. That's where lies the test of our great resolution and our spiritual evolution. So that's the idea of viveka, which we find in this incident in the life of Holy Mother. That how quickly she is immediately, the small incident becomes the jumping board for her to relate to the eternal existence, not to this ephemeral one. And she's having a burst of laughter. Like a small child, she's just laughing at this childishness of his brothers. So the next quality is the vairagya, after viveka. When you know what is permanent, what is impermanent, naturally the question comes, if I know something is, am I aware of the fact something is impermanent, why should I get attached to it? Why should I expect something out of it? So vairagya, as has been defined in the scripture, is the dispassion. What is the dispassion? Iha amutra phala bhoga viraga. Iha, here, amutra, hereafter. Means our attachment to this ephemeral world doesn't exist, is not only limited to my present state of existence. Amutra, even after I die, I will go to the heaven and enjoy, have an extension of the enjoyment of this life in a more intense way. That's the idea of heaven, the extension of the enjoyment of this world in a more intense way, where all the sufferings are eradicated, only the so-called the happiness, the elation which we get out of life, that only is there. Unadulterated happiness I enjoy in the heaven. So that's the idea of our worldly existence, that even after death, I continue to enjoy. Viraga speaks of that yes, that they are not denying heaven. Heaven may be there, but it is just an extension of this present world, which is ephemeral. That is also ephemeral. As in our scriptures, it has been indicated, Kshine Punye Matya Lokam Vishanti. With all the credits which you have earned because of your virtuous way of living, that might take us to some higher plane of existence after death, or even in this life, as I have endeavored to get established in life. As a result, the karma has followed. I do get established. But even in this life, we experience that. We need not have to die and go to heaven. That with all our endeavor, what all wealth, position in life, which I have acquired, can we enjoy it eternally? The way of life is such. It's a flow. After some time, the wealth may be there, but I am going to get old. I am going to get diseased. The death is waiting me. So there is no question of continuing with the things which I have acquired eternally. If this is a fact here, this is a fact even in heaven. Only maybe the period of life may be a bit more extended. But it is also going to end. And very interesting. We may think that extended life, that I don't think of eternity. Even that extended life is something which I desire. This life is so much relative. Just here in this life, you will get an example. Do we as a human being think that my life is something quite a long expanse? No, that even 100 life is after all something which is short for us, because that's why we are trying to extend our life with all sorts of medical research, our exercise, our way of life. That's what we try to do. If we had the idea that this is sufficient, you would have not gone for that. But think, if even your pet dog, if it has that idea, the domesticated dog has the idea that how long we live, the dog will feel that we are something eternal. We are living 5 to 6 times more that lifespan than the so-called the dog or the cat. We are something like devas for them. So it is so relative. But at the same time, when you are human, you don't feel your life is too long. Similarly, when you are a deva, from our standpoint, it is something like infinite. But they will also feel it's very short. Time is something very relative. From one standpoint, it may appear to be long. Even you will find, if you ask a small child, for small children, if you remember, 1 year is quite long. The more we grow older, that 1 year appears to be so quickly passing. You know why? Again, it's the question of relativity. A child of 5 or 6 years, he has lived only 6 years of life. Compared to 6 years, 1 year is really long. But when you have already lived a life of 50, 60 years, so compared to 50, 60, 1 year is really short. So it's just a very easy way of understanding that how this relativity is very important factor in really measuring the time. The same 1 year appears to be so short for an elderly person. So everything in this life or afterlife, which we are thinking of enjoying, has to pass off. They are not going to stay with you eternally. They have to pass on. And then why should I be so much clinging to it? So that's why iha, amutra, phalabhoga, viraga is vairagya. So this is the thing which we find is spontaneously being expressed in the life of Holy Mother. You know that the marriage of Sri Ramakrishna was something, when he was 24, Holy Mother was just 5. So it was just something where the marriage was arranged, but yet to be consummated. So she was living with her parents. Only when she is elder, she will grow up, then only she will be going to her husband's place and stay with the husband. That was the tradition in the olden days. That the engagement was fixed, but the married life started much later. Now, when Holy Mother has reached her puberty, she was a young lady and she came to Dakshineshwar to stay with Ramakrishna. Naturally, Ramakrishna was already totally intoxicated with the divine. He had no intention to lead a so-called worldly life. To test Holy Mother, we find one day Sri Ramakrishna is asking that question. Have you come to drag me to worldliness? Now, any wife do have the right to assert, yes, that's the marriage is meant to be. But we find that she also is attuned to the life of Ramakrishna. And she also has already developed that idea that after all, the life with all these so-called worldly entanglements has no meaning. It's purposeless. At last, it gives us nothing. She has already developed. The answer was something which Sri Ramakrishna also most probably was surprised. She most probably have not expected, because Ramakrishna once told her that you have the right to assert your position in my life, your role in my life. If you say that I have to live a worldly life, I have to obey it. There is the reference of that in Sri Ramakrishna's life. But here we find that Vairagya is already being as if implanted in her life. Sri Ramakrishna some other place told that before she came, Ramakrishna intensely prayed to the Divine Mother, Mother, please make her mind also attuned to mine, so that she can become Sahadharmini. The word Sahadharmini, which we use for the translation as for the wife, actually has a much more deeper significance. Sahadharmini, the dharma which one is following, the other complements it. They both are tuned to the same goal. They both tuned in their ideal. So here we find Holy Mother is a real Sahadharmini. When we find Ramakrishna totally absorbed in the spirituality, what she is replying is something. When Ramakrishna asks, have you come to drag me to worldliness? What's the reply? No, I have come to assist you in your spiritual journey. So that's the thing. And then Ramakrishna felt that my prayer has been answered. Before she came, Ramakrishna's prayer was that make her mind attuned to mine. And that prayer was answered. How nicely she's replying that she came there to assist in his spiritual journey. And that's why we find Sri Ramakrishna to the devotees, what he's saying, what he's admitting is something wonderful. In one place, we find that Ramakrishna is saying, if she had not been completely pure, if she had forgotten herself and made physical demands on me, then would not I too have lost self-control and brought my mind down to the physical level? Who can tell? A person like Sri Ramakrishna is admitting to the fact that she also has the same right as per the divine this authority is concerned. They both have that same right. They both are, as per the illumination is concerned, they both are in the same plane. They're both spiritually illuminated. Actually, the power exerted, the power expressed in Holy Mother's life is something more even than Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna couldn't hide his spiritual ecstasy. In Holy Mother's life, ecstasy was like river Falgu. In India, you have heard that river Falgu, that there are some rivers which has undercurrent. The top, it appears to be just the dry land. But if you, the river is as if the real river, the flow you don't see in the top. You have to dig, and then you will find the water is flowing under the ground. So undercurrent, this which is not visible, is what that Falgu river exemplifies. That's why we find that in our in Indian language they say, but whenever something is not visible, something is a very, very hidden trait, it's like river Falgu. So in the life of Holy Mother, spirituality was like river Falgu. It was an undercurrent that she was leading a life, a very, very highly spiritually evolved life, but outwardly there was no expression of it. Even Ramakrishna himself couldn't hide his ecstasy. Holy Mother had a tremendous capacity. Outwardly, she was so just like an ordinary person. Inwardly, we find that she was established in the highest spiritual knowledge. So that's what we find is mentioned here, that if she had not been completely pure, if she had forgotten herself and made physical demands on me, then would not I too have lost self-control and brought my mind down to the physical level? Who can tell? So this shows the Vairagya, the tremendous Vairagya, in which Holy Mother was established, her life was established. So after Viveka Vairagya comes Samadhamadi Shat Sampatti. There are 6 spiritual treasures which a Vedantin has to practice in his or her life to attain spiritual illumination. So this is the third thread. The six treasures which has to be practiced is after Viveka Vairagya. This 6 treasures has to be practiced, which has been termed as Shama, Damadi, Shat Sampatti. What it means? Shama is one of the first treasures of the 6 treasures. The first treasure is the Shama. The second is Dhamma. Adi means etc. So all this etc. will be spoken of. The Shama, Dhamma, Adi, Shat Sampatti. 6 Sampatti means treasures. Shama. What are the 6 treasures? Shama, Dhamma, Uparati, Titiksha, Samadhana, Shraddha. So we will take up one by one, try to understand them, and then try to understand how they were exemplified in the life of Holy Mother. Sama. Sama means first comes controlling the mind. Dhamma speaks of controlling the sense organs. In the Western psychology, they say that never try to control the impulses. Why? They say they will create mental aberration. And here we find the answer that controlling the mind is in no way harmful because controlling the senses is in no way harmful if it is preceded by the controlling of the mind. If I have convinced myself that the so-called the sensate pleasures of life as such is not going to give me any fulfillment, there are 2 things. Sometimes I find my obsessions are maybe the cause of social disintegration. People will avoid me because of my mental aberrations, and that's why I force myself to behave. That can, of course, result in, that is a repression, that may result in some type of psychological complications. But if I am convinced of the fact this way of life is not going to give me any fulfillment. Even in the modern psychology, they speak of delaying the gratification for some higher purpose. If you develop the capacity to delay your gratifications for higher purpose, that is not going to harm you. That itself is going to help you. So that's the idea which has been found in the Samadhamadi Shat Sampatti. First comes Shama, controlling of the mind. So there we find in the life of Holy Mother, when she was growing up, though she had that idea of renunciation, but after hearing from the other village folk that after all marriage is meant to be consumed so that you have children. So this is the idea that as a married woman, as the wife, at last I have to become a biological mother. So this was most probably also there in the mind of Holy Mother. As a young, she was growing up. Sri Ramakrishna, though he was staying in Dakshineshwar, especially in the rainy season, he used to come back to Kamarpukur, his ancestral home. He used to come there because in the rainy season, the water, the Ganges water becomes a bit turgid, and the turgidity, in those days, the filtration procedure was not something very sophisticated. So he used to get a lot of this digestion issues, the stomach upset, he used to get stomach issues. And that's why, so he used to have these digestion issues, and that's why he used to go to Kamarpukur, his ancestral home, and stay for a few months and then again come back to Dakshineshwar. That's what he used to do every year. And that's the time when Holy Mother, Sharada Devi, was growing up. So when Sri Ramakrishna used to Kamarpukur, to serve him. Jairambati is just 3-4 kilometers away. So she used to come from her parental home to stay with Ramakrishna. And that's the time when instructions given to Holy Mother have started. And though that was in a very, very informal way. It's not something that I'm giving you spiritual instruction. That way Sri Ramakrishna used to teach her. She was still young. Just playfully, even sometimes jokingly, he would give some instructions with the intention that let them seep in, so that it creates a total different type of mental orientation as she grows to an adult woman. And now we find a very nice incident, that Sama, the controlling of the mind, how important it is in the spiritual life. Without that, we cannot think of Dhamma, the controlling of senses. So one day, Holy Mother was, as a young girl, was brooming the courtyard, and Sri Ramakrishna was sitting on one corner of the courtyard. He was sitting there. He was having a hubble bubble. He was smoking, and in a relaxed mood, he started just discussing something with Holy Mother. Of course, she is the wife, but she's saying that what's the use of having biological child? In those days, the children's this mortality rate was quite high because of various types of epidemics that was very prevalent in those days in the villages, like cholera, malaria. It used to be there, a very common thing. And once it comes, it will just sway over the entire society. And the children were highly affected. Many of the children used to die because of all those infections. Now, Sri Ramakrishna started saying this, so that what's the use of having children? Suppose you have a child, and on the day of the first rice-taking ceremony, and you are so happy, you adorn yourself with all the ornaments you have, the guests has been invited, and you are ready to celebrate the joyous occasion, and suddenly you find the child is a bit sick. And then you go to the doctor diagnoses it as malaria, and within a few days the child dies. You open up all your ornaments, you start crying, wailing, all your happiness is gone. And then another child is born, most probably after 1 or 2 years. Again, you just adorn yourself for the first rice-giving ceremony, for the rice-taking ceremony. And then again, this time you find that after a few days, the child died, this time most probably because of cholera. Now, Holy Mother is very interesting. She was having a long well and she was brooming. And she was a small girl. She was yet to be an adult, most probably just in the early teens. And she feebly commented from behind the well. It's a very, very stray comment. Will all of them die? That was the only thing she replied. The Ramakrishna, who was just joking, he immediately jumped up. All this making fun stopped. He jumped up, and what he commented is something very interesting. It seems I have stamped on the tail of a deadly snake, saying that he went inside. Holy Mother also was highly embarrassed. Just see, this is actually the sign of purity. Purity is not innocence. We say as pure as a child. Child is not pure. It is just innocent. We don't know what's hidden in its mind. The moment it starts growing, all those traits will find expression. That is innocence. That is not purity. Purity is maturity through the experiences of life. As you go through the life, the experiences teaches us. For most of us, we don't learn from the experience. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say very nicely, the camel thrives on thorny bushes. It eats the thorny bushes. While eating the thorny bush, it bleeds, but still it goes on eating the thorny bush. That's what our life is. We suffer for our inordinate attachments, but still we go for that. So we don't learn from the experiences. Once it was asked to Swami Sharadananda, a very simple question after the lecture, that what is life? One sentence speaks of how illumined they were. A very simple answer. What is life? No one can deny. What a wonderful answer it was. The answer was, life is nothing but a chain of experiences. Can we deny the fact? It's a chain of experiences. Whether you will or not, you have to go through these experiences, whether we like it or not. That's what our life is. You just look at your life at retrospect, as a retrospect. What's life? It's just a chain of experiences. And the next question was very interesting. That yes, what is life? Is a chain of experiences. Okay, I agree. But what's the aim of life? And immediately Sharadananda replied, to learn from those experiences. That's where we lack. We don't learn from the experiences. If we can learn from the experiences, we can also be spiritually illumined, to learn from those experiences. And when you learn from those experiences, what happens? Your sensitivity increases. The thing which you took to be something quite casual, you will become very sensitive about it. Sometimes we blame the so-called spiritually illumined soul to be extremely sensitive. But small joys and the joke is going on, which is something very casual for all, but they don't take it so casually. That yes, here we find Ramakrishna jumped up. You may say, what is there to jump up? In our scripture, purity has been defined very nicely. What it says, a single sand particle, if it falls on your skin, you don't feel any type of pain or suffering for it. It's just there. But the same sand particle, if it falls on your eyeball, how will you feel? Immediately it starts irritating you. You suffer. The more we learn through the experiences of life. A single sand particle can be the cause of our irritation because we have become more sensitive. We know it's not a just simple innocent enjoyment. It will start gradually creeping into my mind unconsciously, at last to become a huge tsunami. The small bubble in no time can become a huge tsunami if I do not nip it at the bud. And that speaks of Sama. Holy Mother immediately understood that hearing to the simple people of the village, that as a biological mother, as a wife, you should have a biological child. Though she never had any desire for it, but just what she has heard, she told. And from that she understood that yes, there must have this little desire for having a child was in the mind. And that's how Sri Ramakrishna immediately has scanned that. And that speaks of the Sama. Immediately he is no more joking. The one who was sitting and just cutting joke with the Holy Mother immediately gets up. And what she says, he says, I have as if stamped on the tail of a deadly snake. That's how he's reacting. So this speaks of Sama. Dhamma is the controlling, then comes the controlling of the senses. When you have somehow convinced your mind that this worldly way of life at last is not going to give me any satisfaction. You may sometimes feel this life of Ramakrishna and Holy Mother is too much. Is it that being a married person, is it not okay to have children? The avatars, the spiritual incarnations comes to exemplify something. We may not be up to it, just like when you are navigating through the ocean. I can never touch the pole star, it is high up in the sky, but it can show me the way. So their life is very high. It may not be possible to touch it, but it can show us the way. What's the way it shows us? That after all, marrying, having children is okay. That's how the life continues. But to have inordinate attachment just for the sensual pleasures is in a way going to disintegrate our life in the long run, making us totally a pauper in the spirit, not even in the spiritual sense. Even in the worldly sense, we find that the more we are having inordinate attachments for something, we become a psychological wreck at last. No one will have faith in you. You will be always doubted as per your integrity is concerned. So why not take the marriage that way? That's why in gospel we find that after having one or two children, live like brother and sister. This may appear to be too much, but what he's speaking speaks of at last our own psychological integrity. That I have, as a married person, taken care of the responsibility for the human, the generations to continue. Now I do have to take care of my spiritual life, which at last is going to give me my fulfillment. Why not be a responsible being in that sense? As a human being, we alone are responsible. We have the ability to respond in the desired way. That's what the word responsibility means. Responsibility. No other creature has. All the creatures are being driven by their impulses. The responses are fixed. A particular stimuli, for that the responses are fixed. As a human being, we have the capacity to respond as it is desired. We can choose it. And that lies our capacity, and that speaks of Dhamma. Once I have understood what is desirable, now comes the controlling of the senses. Here we find that Holy Mother, when she came to Dakshineshwar as a young lady, and as she has already decided to complement Ramakrishna as per the spiritual journey is concerned, to cooperate with him, to assist him, there we find a wonderful way of controlling the senses. It doesn't have to come to the gross level, even in the day-to-day simple life. Sister Nivedita, sometimes even in the Indian tradition, when we are growing up, sometimes we even don't notice the sublimity of some tradition, of our tradition. Nivedita, when she heard one thing, that Holy Mother had a long veil, even in presence of Ramakrishna, hardly Ramakrishna has seen Holy Mother's face. That's what Nivedita is writing in one of the letters. Can you believe? The one who has the right on his husband, she, just to cooperate him, has never shown her face to her husband. She was in a long veil. What else can be given as an example, better example of controlling yourself when you have already decided to lead a life as per your ideal? She had the intention to serve Sri Ramakrishna, and we find that where she was staying, just adjacent to Ramakrishna's room, not in the same room, there's a small Nahabat, the place where at the time of the evening Vesper service at Dakshineshwar Kali temple, there used to be this Nahabat. The Nahabat was meant for playing the musical instruments. When the Arthikam is going on, so in the Nahabat, the Shehnai will be played. So there are two Nahabats, both were not used. The one which was used, that was on the other corner. And this one which was not used, the small rooms, very small room. You cannot imagine. Even the door was so low that you have to bend down to enter. And there she has spent years just to serve the master and his extended spiritual family. Those who used to come to him for spiritual guidance, spiritual instruction. To all of them, she was serving, staying in that room, just because she wants to be in association with her husband, who is the holiest of the holy. What more can speak of Dhamma, the controlling of the senses, regulating the life? Once she is convinced of the Shama, that the mind has to be regulated, it is followed by Dhamma. Uparati, it speaks of that we find that our mind, though we have taken the resolution to control our mind, the mind's nature is such, it will get distracted. It's a monkey mind. Uparati speaks of bringing them back, cajoling and bringing them back again and again. So that's what the idea of Uparati, that the distracted mind, again you bring it back to your focus. And we find that Holy Mother's prayer, day after day, this wonderful prayer, we all, it's an ideal prayer, which I think we all can internalize. It's such a simple prayer, which Holy Mother used to pray unceasingly. She was, as such, not educated in the academic education. So her words are very simple, very simple. What's the prayer? That even I look at the moon, we say that as pure as moon. The moon appears to be stainless. But we all know, if you look intently at the moon, there is that because of the mountainous terrain in the moon, there are some stains visible even from the earth. Even on the full moon night, you can see those stains. There are so many imaginations. Some say that some lady is sitting there and playing on the charka, and what all those things are there, those stains. So Holy Mother's prayer was very interesting. That stains can be seen even on the surface of the moon. O Lord, make my mind stainless, even purer than the moon as if. That was the unceasing prayer. What a wonderful prayer. Make my mind stainless. Even stains are there in the moon. Make my mind even more purer, more that the moon appears to be so pure, so soothing. It should be more soothing, more calm even than the moon. So Mother, there are stains even on the surface of the moon. Make my mind stainless. So that speaks of the Uparati. Titiksha. Titiksha is forbearance. The next practice. Forbearance is very important in spiritual life, even in our day-to-day life. Nowadays, in the name of freedom. Previously, especially our women folks suffered a lot. They had no education. They were totally dependent on male, especially the Indian society, even the other societies we find. It is the male who was the earning member, and the female was totally dependent on her. And there were a lot of atrocities going on. The way the woman was exploited. It's a history, it's there. But once we realize that the education came into picture and we find that both are educated, we all did this to get rid of all the exploitations, the suffering which entails from all those exploitation. But have we really achieved that goal? Yes, we have educated women. That's of course laudable. It has to be. It has to be appreciated. But what has happened? The real education didn't happen. In the question of education, the question of getting financial freedom, we really lost the real sense of freedom to coexist. Freedom doesn't mean to go just to walk down the center of the road, that I have the freedom to walk and that we're disrupting the traffic. We know they never do that. My freedom in no way is going to hamper others' freedom. That's the real sense of freedom. But we will find here that we have become so that our sense of freedom has given us so much assertion to our own ego that we are not in any way ready to even coexist by little compromise. That your interest comes first. That's primary. I am ready to sacrifice for that. That speaks of love. That has totally gone in the society. And what to speak of spiritual life? Even in our day-to-day life, we find what has happened in the name of freedom. What has happened? We were suffering in the frying pan, and we told it is not the place to stay there. We jumped and fell in the oven. The suffering was more intense. We jumped from the frying pan to the oven in the name of the freedom. That's why Sri Ramakrishna always used to say that in our Indian language, there are 3 S. When your tongue touches the teeth, there's a particular type of S pronunciation. When the middle of the tongue touches the palate, then a hissing sound comes. That is a different type of pronunciation. So there are 3 types of S in Sanskrit. And Sri Ramakrishna, in his colloquial way, used to say, why there are 3 S? To stress Sahya. Forbearance in Sanskrit calls Sahya, Sajja. Sha, je, shoy, she, roy, je, na, shoy, tar, na, shoy. If you cannot forbear, know it for certain, it is going to kill you. In the name of freedom, at last you will find it is you who are suffering. And it's titiksha in the spiritual sense. Even in our worldly sense, it makes us disintegrated. In spiritual sense, there cannot be any spiritual progress. If the little disturbance of the life disturbs me, how can you calm your mind and think of God? A little something which is not as per your desire happens and it disturbs you. How can you think of calming down your mind and think of God? It's impossible. That's why even Jesus says that if you have a fight with your brother, first resolve that before you go to offer something in the altar of the divine. If you have fight with your brother and you have not resolved, know it for certain, your offering won't be accepted. The same idea, titiksha, that to certain extent we have to forbear. And we find that highly, if anything, which is predominant in the life of Holy Mother is this titiksha. She was not staying in some nunnery. She was staying with all those half-mad family members. Pagli Mami, a adjective Pagli was used in front of her name because she was really mad. With her, she was staying. Radhu, the daughter of Pagli Mami, she herself developed the traits of her mother. Nalini Didi, obsessive cleaning for small things. When she has taken a dip in the village pond and while returning, if a crow just flows over her head, she will again go to take a dip. That type of obsession, this type of people are surrounding her. And you have to just read through her life. There are innumerable examples where we find that Holy Mother, how wonderfully she is not only managing these people, and she is at the same time maintaining her equipoise. And this is the quality without which we can never think of having any type of spiritual progress. Shankaracharya, how nicely has defined this titiksha. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam. That you have to forbear with the sufferings of life without trying to mend them, rectify them. Why not try to rectify them? Yes, if they can be rectified, you should rectify. But we will find in life, 99% of the problems are something over which we have no control. You cannot rectify. So don't think of rectifying. But at the same time, that we are bound to do that. We do that. When I know my boss in my office is a half-mad person, I bear because I know my job has to be there. But how I bear? The next line is very important. We just silently bear, constantly grumbling within. That won't help. So sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam. Next line is very important. Chinta vilapa rahitam. Without that grumbling, without cursing inwardly. In your mind, you're cursing others, there's swearing on others. That has to stop. You have to be calm within. Sat tat titiksha nigatyate. Then only it is titiksha. That even if the others are the cause of your suffering, knowing that the entire world is one with God, have a sense of love and reverence for others. As very nicely the Bhagavatam it has been said, that if it is God who has become everything, we are all the part of the divine, how can we be angry on others? And the next example it gives is very interesting. While taking food, when accidentally my tongue gets bitten by my own teeth, whom do I blame? So when you have the sense of oneness, the question of fighting, asserting doesn't come. That's the titiksha which has been spoken of as a fourth practice. When you have got established in this, then comes the question of samadhana. Samadhana is a question of this concentration, focus, samadhi, getting absorbed in your spiritual idea, the spiritual abstract thought which you have as per your ideology. On that you get totally absorbed. That speaks of samadhana. This is very nicely exemplified in the life of Holy Mother. When Swami Yogananda, as a young boy, was staying in Dakshineshwar, one day it so happened that at night, Swami Ramakrishna the marriage was never consummated. He never lived with Holy Mother. Now, one day night, Yogananda was staying in Ramakrishna's room. He woke up and found Ramakrishna is not there. And now, as a young boy, doubt came to his mind. It's natural, it may happen that he preaches renunciation. He shows the world that he's renounced, but at night, where has he gone? Just next door, the next building, where Holy Mother stays at Nahavat. Is he in Nahavat? This Yogan, this doubt tormented him so much, he got up and he hid himself outside so that he can look at the door of Nahavat. and he was waiting to see whether when Ramakrishna comes out of there. And now, very interesting, when he comes out with that intention, he finds a wonderful thing. The first thing he sees that Holy Mother is not inside the house. It was a full moon night. She was sitting outside, supporting a pillar. She was sitting totally absorbed. She was always had a long veil, but she was so absorbed in her meditation and knowing very well at night no one is going to be there. When her veil has fallen off, no one knew. The veil has fallen off. She was totally deeply immersed in meditation. But still, Yogananda was waiting. Where Ramakrishna is there? Where is he? So he was still waiting to see where Ramakrishna is. And then suddenly he saw Ramakrishna was coming from the Panchavati. You know, in the olden days, for the nature's call, even in villages, now the things are gradually changing. They used to, that's why it's called nature's call. That when you have the urge, you go for the biological reasons. Previously, people used to go to the nature. That's why it's nature's call. So Ramakrishna had a nature's call. For the nature's call, he went to near something behind the Panchavati. He was coming from the Panchavati, the grove where he did his sadhana. Behind that, from there he was coming. So now Yogananda was really embarrassed. So Ramakrishna actually went for the nature's call, but this gives the revelation that Holy Mother, how absorbed one can be, where that the one who is so shy, have even that veil has fallen off. She is not aware, totally absorbed in deep meditation. The one whose mind is already established in Shama, Dhamma, Uparati, Diksha, that's what obviously follows. The mind is totally absorbed in Samadhi. And all these things are guided by the sixth treasure, that is the Shraddha. If we are constantly doubting, then the spiritual practice can never start. For most of us, there is no Shraddha. Shraddha is there for some for if I am students of science, when someone says me something that say that Einstein's theory of relativity, I immediately believe. There's no need for proving it. If I say, if it's school students say that prove it, then I will believe it. The teacher will say, you are not yet, your education level is not up to that, so that I can prove it to you. When you go to the post-graduation level, then this thing can be shown to you palpably. For now, you take it as a working principle, and we simply, as we have faith that Einstein is always right, the scientist is always right, with unflinching faith, I take their words to be true and proceed in my studies to come to the state when I realize that what they told can be proven. But in spiritual life, very interesting. When a spiritually illumined soul speaks of this detachment and other things, we simply brush off. These are all nonsense. He is a mental wreck trying to convince us with all his peculiar way of living. If that's what our mental attitude is, the question of spiritual other steps doesn't come at all. So Shraddha is the guiding thing, the unflinching faith in Guru and in the scripture is faith. It's just like going to the doctor. When I have some physical ailment, I go to the doctor prescribes me something, I just take it. I follow the prescription. Why? Do I understand anything of the medical science? Nothing. But I have the faith. I know that this medical research is authentic. And this person who has studied those things will be just prescribing me as per the authenticity of the medical science. And I just believe. And I get cured as per the prescription. I don't have to myself go through the entire medical science. That is Shraddha. So here also the one who is already gone through that path and has got illumined, he is prescribing something. He is prescribing something, and if I don't have faith, the question of other spiritual stages doesn't come. And in the life of Holy Mother, again, we find that unflinching faith of Ramakrishna. When she heard that Ramakrishna has gone mad when she was in Dakshineshwar, that has gone mad, she had that faith. It's a different type of madness. It cannot be the madness as we know. There are two types of madness. The one is really the becoming a mental wreck. Another madness I will just give an example to explain what's that madness. Suppose all the people are dancing on a particular rhythm. Some party is going on, there's a particular rhythm in which all are dancing. And you find all are in rhythm, and you find one person is out of the rhythm. And you say, oh, he cannot dance, he's out of the rhythm. So madness is also something like that. We are all dancing in a particular rhythm of worldliness. Someone is out of the rhythm. And then someone discovered actually he's not out of the rhythm. It is appearing that he's out of the rhythm. He is hearing some other tune and dancing, which we don't hear. So he is hearing some other tune in that rhythm he's dancing. And Holy Mother understood that even when she was a young girl. She knew it is not a madness, it is an ordinary madness. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when someone used to say that people are saying that you are mad, Ramakrishna's simple answer was that all are mad. Some are mad after money, some are mad after power and position, some are mad after worldly ways of life, or some are mad for women. I am mad for God. What's the harm in it? All are mad. So that's the answer. And Holy Mother found that yes, this is the madness which speaks of the minority. In this world, nothing is true. The reality which we speak of is a consensus reality. When I see the red color is generated by my mind. The same red color is generated by you. And majority says red, but there are some colorblind who doesn't see it red, and I say he's colorblind. But actually, we all have projected that color and we vote that it is red. And that's how we all consent to it is real. It becomes a consensus reality. But there is no such thing as red. Similarly, the world with its worldly ways says this is the natural. And when someone is bit different from it, we say he's unnatural. Holy Mother had that Shraddha. And that's why when she comes to Dakshineshwar, his life becomes a guiding principle. The last principle, I won't take time, it's mumukshutva. The tremendous eagerness should be there. Once you have the faith, you have started the spiritual journey, inside the tremendous yearning should be there. That yearning, what Sri Ramakrishna is to define how, that when you force someone deep into the water, the way he or she will be panting for breath till you leave him. He will be panting for breath, gasping. That's the way do you feel for God. That's the mumukshutva. That eagerness speaks of the acceleration in our spiritual journey. How quickly we will evolve spiritually. It's only that eagerness decides how eager you are, how much yearning you have. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that yearning is the red hue of the dawn. In the morning sky, you see the red hue. The sun is yet to be visible. But you know, it's a matter of minutes. The sun will be visible. The red hue indicates that. Similarly, the yearning indicates that this spiritual vision, realization is bound to happen when you have that yearning. In the life of Holy Mother, this is a small, funny example. We will end this discussion today. Now, you know that Ramakrishna, when he had the devotees in his room, and there was a lot of kirtan, the spiritual singing, dancing was going on, Ramakrishna now and then is going to ecstasy. He knew very well that from Nahabat, his room is visible if all the doors are kept open. So he wanted that they should also enjoy. But in those days, as the ladies never used to come in front of the congregation, so that, and in Nahabat there used to be some screens, so that from behind the screen they can somehow manage to see what's going on. Ramakrishna used to keep the doors open, and now Ramakrishna noticed there is a small hole in the screen through which Holy Mother and Lakshmi, one of the niece of Ramakrishna, she also now and then used to stay in Dakshineshwar. So they used to peep through that hole to witness what's that that's the merriment, that mirth of joy, which has been created in the Ramakrishna's room. To visualize that through that hole, they used to peep. And naturally, as they were eager to enjoy, share that joy, that hole somehow started becoming bigger. They used to just try to drag. And Ramakrishna noticed that. One day to his nephew Ramlal, he told, see that the cage in which these two birds stay, whole is becoming bigger. That speaks of the mumukshutvam. So with this, we will say that in our life, somehow those of us who have developed a little taste for the divine, that little taste for the divine is like that hole in our world, in the wall of worldliness. That little taste of the divine is like that hole, like Holy Mother's Nahavat, that in our life, that a cage of Nahavat in which we are staying, from where we have somehow tested that the divine bliss a little by reading the life of this spiritually illumined soul. That little test has developed. Our prayer in the special days, let that hole become bigger. Let there be more and more relate with that spiritual dimension, so that the fulfillment which we all want a fulfillment, real happiness in life, real joy, which we all seek, but we don't get because we take the wrong path. For us, what has happened, that there's a tree, that example which we give again and again, there's a mango tree laden with ripe mango, this mango fruits. We want to get the mango, and there are two walls. We hurriedly kept the ladder in one of the walls to climb up and get the mango, to find that I should have kept the ladder on the next wall. This one is a bit far away. Then I would have got the mangoes. In our life, we do the same endeavor. So much energy we waste by keeping the ladder in the wrong wall. If we would have kept the ladder on the correct wall with the same endeavor, we would have reached the mangoes. And that speaks of the mumukshutva, to keep the ladder in the correct wall and have with that eagerness. We have to search for the divine dimension of our spiritual dimension of existence, to get established in it. And that alone can give us fulfillment. That for that type of mukshutvam that we may also develop. With this prayer, I would like to just end our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.